Hey, welcome to Genre Exposure, a film podcast. Join us as we explore the wide world of cinema, broaden our horizons one movie at a time. I'm one of your hosts, Dustin, and as usual, I'm here with Michael.
Hello there.
And Jason.
Hey, everyone.
What's up, guys? How you doing?
Doing good.
I'm pooped, man, but I'm happy to be here talking about movies.
Hey, nothing's more exciting than talking about movies. Nothing.
It's better than sex.
Whoa, this is a weird intro already. Well, listen, Michael.
It depends on the movie, and it depends on the sex.
Listen,
That's very true.
there's two kinds of people in this world. Those with loaded guns and those who dig.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good quote.
Nice.
Because today we are starting off our series all about Westerns, and we're going to cover a different Western movie each episode, same as we've been doing. But first, we're going to warm up with what we've been talking about. And before that, I have another podcast shout-out to give.
Do it.
Because we are...
We're like, well,
we are
waiting.
part of the Prescribed Film Podcast Network, and we're under no compulsion to rep any of these other podcasts, but I want to give back and show love to other shows that are out there. And I'm slowly working my way through checking out all our other network neighbors. So this week I checked out Cracktastic Plastic.
That's a cool name.
Oh, yeah, this is Jason's thing, right?
Yeah, the guy that's kind of over the network. It's a podcast all about toy collecting.
Yes.
Which is one of the things I like about the network we're on, because like it is primarily film focused, but then they have a few shows that are like ancillary to like, if you're already a film nerd, there's a chance that one of these other shows is going to catch you too into some other interest you have.
I mean, I'm a toy collector, hardcore. So.
Oh yeah. So the core premise is that the group that gathers are actually members of a punk rock band called X-Ray Mary.
Nice.
And spurred on by listening to this, I went and looked up their band. They're great. Early level.
Cool.
Super good. I'll shoot you guys the link. I'll maybe put that in the show notes too.
Yeah,
It's just
do
like
it.
a bonus. But yeah, they just get together every episode and they talk about toys and toy collecting and stuff. There's four main people: Corey, Jason, Spoonie, and Elgin.
Is that like Knifey Spoony?
I don't know.
I haven't heard them yet, but Spoonie is already my favorite.
I got a Simpsons reference in really quick.
Or maybe it's
You did.
maybe it's Spoolie now that I'm thinking about it.
Oh, now I'm disappointed.
Yeah. Clearly, you've never played Knifey Spoony before.
Or Knifey Spoolie.
That's all my bad. I'm sorry to whoever you are. I only listened to one episode, so I didn't quite get those names down
Poor
perfect.
guy, he's sitting there like, we got a shout out, but he didn't remember me.
But what's cool is they each kind of have like their own like thing that they focus on. Like one of them is all about Transformers, one of them is all about G.I. Joes, one of them is all about Masters of the Universe, and they kind of do the like, you know, like
Is one of them about Star Wars?
I don't think so. I know they talk about Star Wars.
Maybe I
but-
need to just go in there on their pod, like
Yeah,
a guest on their
yes,
pod,
sure.
since I
There you
collect
go.
all the Star Wars
I mean, the
stuff.
others are cool too, especially Transformers. That was always my favorite toy line.
So like, you know, we warm up every time talking about a film that we've watched. A lot of film podcasts do that. They warm up by talking about like the most recent toy they've bought, and they'll bring something to share.
That's cool.
Almost like a show and tell thing. So it's a lot of fun. They're very passionate. It's not a thing that like I'm into ever. Like I collect, like I get a Transformer here or there when there's one I really think's cool looking, or like random anime figures. Like that's a whole other world, like figure arts and all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way because, I mean, I have some monster figures over here,
Yeah.
but I don't really collect toys. But, like, most of my YouTube channels are all, like, toy channels, so I kind of live vicariously watching those.
And a good chunk of your monster figures came from me.
They sure did.
when I was like, I need
sure
to
did.
downsize because I can't fit this shit in my house
You didn't
anymore.
want to scare your child.
So more than recommending this to anyone, Michael, you definitely need to go listen to this
I know.
podcast.
I saw Jason had shared a post about it the other day, and I was like, man, I really need to check that podcast out because I guarantee the new Masters of the Universe toys are pretty awesome. The new 6-inch line.
That was the vibe I got off the one episode I listened to.
Are they based off the cartoon? Or
The
is
new
it-
one,
new ones.
Revolution, Revelations.
Revelations, and there's like Origin too, which is like another line, I think.
The Revelations one are cool. They're like super articulated. I really wanted the Tila one, but I couldn't. I don't have any of the others, and Piper was going to be like, "Why are we now collecting this
Once you start one, that's the
the
downfall.
But the Tila looked great, so I
yeah,
may
if
still
you
get it.
dig
Do
toy
it.
collecting,
Get it, man. Be a rebel.
Cracktastic Plastic, go check them out.
Very sweet.
Excellent.
Jason, what you been watching?
I'm happy to report I watched a good movie.
Ooh.
I watched a very good movie, actually. The Rental from 2020.
Yeah, I read about that one.
Which is directed by Dave Franco. You were just talking about him before we started.
The same
recording.
Dave Franco?
The same Dave Franco.
Ah!
Yeah.
Take a look at my shit. Look at my shit. Look at my shit.
It's got a great cast. It's got Dan Stevens in it, Alison Brie. It's about these two couples. There's two brothers and one of the wives and the other girlfriend, and they go to this cabin.
Wait, no, I know what this is now.
To get away for the weekend.
This was written by somebody important. Hold on, I'm pulling it up.
I think it was Dave Franco.
Because I heard the synopsis for this, and I was like, dude, this sounds amazing. Yeah. Sorry, continue.
Of course. So I don't want to say too much because you don't really know where it's going to go at first. But it's one of those great movies where it could be a play because it's basically just all set in this house. And it's a great example of something I love in films is where one bad decision just leads to a cascade of more bad decisions.
Nice.
And horrible things happen. So without saying too much, good acting. It's directed well. It's a nice little movie. There's a couple of surprises, I think, in it. Without saying too much, I really can't go into it. But check it out. It's on Showtime right now. So, but you could do the free rental, the free trial thing.
Oh yeah,
watch it
And
watch Yellow Jackets while you're at it.
That's the whole reason I wanted to save my free trial to make sure that I saw
great.
all of Yellow Jackets.
Yeah.
We'll now add the rental in there on it.
I
watch the
swore
rental, dude.
that this guy, so it's Joe Swanberg is one of the writers.
Yes.
Isn't he one of the Mumblegore people?
Yes, I think he wrote You're Next.
Yes.
Which I think is...
I like a lot of the stuff he's done.
And he worked on VHS.
Maybe he didn't write You're Next?
He's in it, isn't it?
He's
actors.
in it.
Yeah.
But no, he is one of the Mumblegore people,
Yeah.
which is one of... I think that's why I thought it was... Why I was like, it's important, somebody who wrote this. Not that other people aren't important that wrote
Oh,
it.
yeah. It's cool.
Everyone's important, Michael. God.
I mean, no, not really in the grand scheme of life, but okay.
Wow, that's depressing.
So I don't have a movie per se. I have a TV show again, but it's important. So
Is it like important in the grand scheme of life important?
Look, I'm tired of you guys breaking the rules here. You got to do movies. What's wrong with you?
what if it has a movie as well?
Breaking the law, breaking the law.
Continue, and I will
So when this
give
airs,
you my judgment.
when this airs, it'll be way past. But as of recording, this week was 01 Day, which is the day that Shout Factory has released Kamen Rider 01 on Blu-ray, which marks the first time the Kamen Rider franchise has kind of come over to the U.S. on home media. There's a little asterisk on that because there has been one other release in the past, but it's kind of weird. It was a strange, like, only in Hawaii thing.
That is strange.
Put that out of your mind. Kamen Rider's in America finally, and it's great.
right.
I've ranted about it before. I love this series. I love this franchise. It's been going since like the 70s on and off.
And this is the first one?
This is the first of like the new era they've been doing, which started like 2 or 3 years ago.
Oh, okay.
I really want to watch it. It looks like something I'd really dig.
Yeah.
So kind of the hook of these, they're tokusatsu shows. They're always about these people that transform into like armored heroes. It's very like Power Ranger-y, but it's a bit more mature, I would say, and serious in focus. I mean, it's still a kid show in the end, but it's like, well, first of all, what Japan thinks is okay to show to kids is way different than what we think here. Like,
Yeah.
there'll actually be like stakes, where people could die, and there's consequences if the bad guys win, and it's not just like totally safe.
It doesn't
the
talk
entire
down
time.
to the children and shit like that.
Yeah, but 01 is like a great starting place, so I really wanted to promote it and shout it out there. Like, it's set in the near future, and it's about this company called Hedon Intelligence, and they've made these things called Humagears, which are like AI robots that look like humans, and they can be programmed for any sort of job or task.
So they're
And-
sex bots, is what you're saying.
They don't go that dark.
Oh.
But basically,
Dark.
they're just meant to like assist humanity, right? They can do jobs that people might be like might be lethal to do, or to help people with their regular tasks.
So sex bots.
God damn it.
And the main character, Arto Hedon, is like the grandson of the founder of this company. And mysteriously, one day, the founder dies, and he sort of like inherits the company out of nowhere.
Classic.
And it's all heralded with this like prophecy by the founder that there's going to be this terrorist group that shows up, and will know how to like hack the Humagears and turn them against humanity. Which comes to pass with these this group called Mitsubo Jinrai Net, which are Humagears that have like awakened and become self-aware. Another typical AI like trope plot concept.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to like cause an uprising among these Humagear to like displace humanity. Cool. And with the 0-1 driver, he transforms into this masked hero to kind of fight them off and protect people. And it just is like a really good classic sci-fi story that goes through all the stuff of like, if you know any sci-fi stuff like iRobot or anything like all those tropes of like, do AIs have rights? Do they count as a person? You know, all those things. It works through all of that.
Much like the Star Trek Next Generation episode Measure of a Man, where they decided that Data was not property of Starfleet and he was in fact sentient.
You got that in real early this time.
Yeah.
No, but it's super fun, and if you love like, you know, good like choreographed combat, crazy special effects, all that kind of fun stuff, it's really great. It's worth checking out. They do have a streaming platform they're doing for all this stuff, and I think it's called like Tokushoutsu, since Shout Factory is behind it. It's like web-based, but I know they serve some of their stuff to different platforms, and one of them is Tubi. So our ever-reliant Tubi, you can go on there, you can search Kamen Rider, and you can check some of this stuff out if you've never encountered it before.
I'm going to watch it.
Do it.
I'm going to watch it.
And it does have a theatrical film, so technically it kind of counts.
Is it stitched together from the TV series, or is it like its own kind of spin-off?
It's sort of like an epilogue to the show.
Okay.
So technically, Jason, suck it.
All right, Michael, what you got?
So
better not be a TV show.
It's not. It's a fucking movie.
All right.
I have always really liked. I mean, I grew up in the '90s, same as Dustin did, and so like I cut my teeth on Batman the Animated Series.
Oh yeah.
Like, it's still fucking great, man. Like,
it holds up.
It holds up really well. But because of that, I always loved that style of animation and kind of the DC Heroes thing. Mm-hmm. I never really read DC Comics very much.
I was very sparingly on that.
Yeah, they were... I don't know.
I was a Marvel kid. All the Marvel heroes are, like, flawed and make mistakes and stuff, you know, so...
Well, interesting that you say that, because what I watched was one of the new DC Animations... studios thing that they put out for Injustice, which I guess there's a video game based on it. I didn't play that.
Yeah, it started as games and they spun it off into comics and on and on.
So now DC Animations, which has actually been carrying the ball really well as far as like doing animated.
That's always carried DC.
Yeah, pretty much. But their stuff's really good. Like I've said before, Under the Red Hood's one of my favorites. It's such a great story. They're the same kind of animation that drove like Batman the Animated Series, the Superman Animated Series, Justice League, same animation style, so it's very familiar, but they kind of take on a bunch of classic comic storylines. Like right before this one, they did The Long Halloween.
Which is probably my favorite Batman story.
I watched the first half and really liked it, and then I fell asleep in the second half, so...
oh, no.
That's just because I have a kid. But there's usually a lot of pretty high-profile voice talent on these, and they get some cool people to do it. So Injustice is basically the story. It's set in an alternate Earth, so not Earth 1, Superman, and Batman, like all those or whatever. The Joker tricks Superman into accidentally killing Lois Lane, which causes a rampage. And then Superman decides he's going to take control of Earth and kind of do... It very much reminds me of the current Boys storyline of the Boys, where... They're like, well, what if we just put superheroes in charge? Like, nobody else will break the law and all this stuff. It's kind of like what happens if Superman goes totalitarian.
I think it's funny because there's been all these comics that have now become shows about, like, what if Superman was evil? And now it seems like DC's general gimmick these days is to go, well, what if Superman was evil?
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty much what Injustice is. And it's kind of breaks Superman's always like, no, we don't kill people. You know, we've got to be better than that kind of a thing. But because Superman faces like a horrible loss, he just breaks. And so now it's left to like Batman and a few of the other allies that are like, hey, this is wrong. This is injustice. To stop Superman. And it turns out they fucking can't.
Jason's just wanting to scream right now.
I'm all right. I'm good.
But Jason, something I think you might find cool is the voice of Batman. And this one is Anson Mount.
Oh, cool. Yes.
Star Trek reference too. So.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's mostly kind of like if you're familiar with the voice actors that do a lot of the cartoons and stuff, a lot of those guys show up in this, like Fred Tatasciore and Kevin Pollak actually voices the Joker in this one.
That's interesting.
So it's kind of fun. For me, the Joker's usually always Mark Hamill.
Oh, yeah.
But it's cool to see other actors put their spin on the Joker and stuff like that. This was streaming on HBO Max. It's okay.
So is it just a film, like a standalone?
Yeah, it's maybe an hour 45 or something like that.
Cool.
It's not the best one of this.
But you stayed awake for it. So.
I did, yeah. I wouldn't say it's the best one, mainly just because the storyline's a little tired. Mm-hmm. You know, because it feels like when I was watching it, I was like, I'd rather just watch The Boys.
It's like The Boys. It's like Civil War. That's been comic books for a while.
Everybody's done it.
Let's make our guys fight our guys.
But the voice acting is really top notch. The animation's really good. It's very slick to look at, and so even for the worst ones of these, they're still a lot of fun to watch. So kind of lighthearted fun for me. Kind of takes me back to my childhood. A little bit of nostalgia.
Cool. Nice.
So yeah, if you want to check it out.
I like that Jason skewed super serious, and then you and I are talking about kids shows.
Oh yeah, pretty much.
Not Injustice though.
There has to be at least one adult in the room.
Oh yeah, I should preface though, Injustice is not for children.
Do they actually like go full tilt with like the violence and stuff? Because the games I remember were like rated M.
Superman punches like somebody cuts off Solomon Grundy's arm. I think it's Superman, like with his laser eyes or whatever. And then Superman kills somebody. I won't say who because it's spoiler. But like literally just punches straight through their chest, and you're like, oh, okay. And then there's a lot of like they say shit a lot in it, so it's definitely not a kids one for this one. I think it's rated R. I don't know. I don't know. That's
a bonus.
It is rated R. It's an hour and 18 minutes, and it's rated R.
Jason's back in.
I do like violence.
Freaks in nature.
Too.
Yeah. So HBO Max. Check it out if you want.
All right, so today we're launching off our block about Western films, and we're starting with Michael's pick, which is Silverado.
Ride 'em in rawhide.
And since this is the start of this series, and it's the first time we've ever talked about Westerns on this podcast, I thought it would be a good idea to do our usual bit of background, bit of setup. I mean, I think generally everyone knows what a Western is, but it's worth talking about a little bit, right?
Yeah. Some clarification.
I think there's some people who don't know what a Western is, though, based on some of the shit you read and the conversations we had amongst ourselves. So
why don't you tell
see.
us?
Let's hash those out.
So, Westerns are a genre of fiction and film set primarily in the later half of the 19th century and the early 20th century in the Western United States, which is typically stylized as the Old West or the Wild West.
And sometimes it looks a lot like Italy.
From time to time, yes.
Yeah.
More specifically, the American Film Institute says that a Western film is one that is set in the American West and embodies the spirit, the struggle, and the demise of that new frontier. The term Western was used to describe a narrative film genre, and it appears to have first originated in July 1912 in an article in Motion Picture World magazine. Most of the characteristics of Western films were part of the 19th century popular Western fiction originally, so it was firmly placed in popular art before it transferred over into film. Some of the first films that would have belonged to this genre were a series of short single-reel silents made in 1894 by Edison Studios, and they featured veterans like Buffalo Bill's Wild West show exhibiting their skills. And that included people like Annie Oakley with shooting, and members of the Sioux doing different dances. The earliest known Western narrative film is the British short Kidnapping by Indians, made by Mitchell and Kenyon in Blackburn, England in 1899. One you'll often hear about is the Great Train Robbery from 1903.
Yeah.
That's often pointed to as the first one, but it technically wasn't the first. It was kind of just the first that like shot off and popularized everything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, probably because that other one was pretty racist.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, they all are for quite a while, so I can't really like give one credit and the other one.
So that's kind of the inception. So then I think the next thing to talk about is sort of the elements. Like we have the broad level. It's about the Old West, the quote Wild West.
It's also kind of insane that movies are being made about the Old West when it was still basically the Old
Like
West.
the New West.
I mean, the Civil War was only over for like, what, 30 years or something? when it was made?
1865 is...
Yeah.
It's a funny thing I think in general about America is that like we don't have like a far back history that we can like toss to for things like this. So it really is just the Wild West is like our one thing.
Yeah. That's our mythology.
So what are Westerns more specifically if we dig in? So the stories commonly center on the life of a nomadic drifter character, often male, often white. Typically, they're a cowboy or a gunfighter who will ride a horse and is armed with a revolver or a rifle. Very often, they'll wear broad-brimmed hats, neckerchief bandanas, vests, cowboy boots, spurs, or other similar attire. Very often, and especially true of earlier films in the genre, women will be cast in secondary roles, often as either the romantic interest or a supporting role, such as saloon girls, prostitutes, wives of ancillary characters, characters included to be like comic relief. Obviously, as film has progressed, that's become much better over time.
Obviously.
To a degree. Never far enough.
Yeah.
Other recurring character types include Native Americans of various tribes, African Americans, Mexicans, lawmen, bounty hunters, outlaws, bartenders, traders, gamblers, soldiers, because as you mentioned, the Civil War, relevant of this time, pioneers, and various types of settlers from farmers to ranchers. If we want to talk about ambience and kind of the style or tone, as far as like score, they would often use American folk music. Depending on the setting, they would blend that with maybe Spanish or Mexican folk music as well. Westerns would often stress the harshness of the wilderness, and they frequently would be set in arid, desolate landscapes such as the deserts, mountains, plains. Often, the vast landscape will play an important role to the film and present a sort of mythic vision of the American West. Typical locations might include stuff like ranches, frontier towns, saloons, railways, the open wilderness, or perhaps an isolated military fort. Many Westerns will often use stock plots that depict things like a crime, and then show the pursuit of the wrongdoing, and then end in a sort of revenge or retribution that often gets resolved through a shootout.
The only way to resolve your differences, in my opinion.
If it worked for Hamilton's kid, it worked for me.
Yeah. I thought it would be worth noting, too, that technically in the broader sense of things, Westerns are considered period dramas. And among those, we have things like the samurai genre in Japan, and these two genres have actually influenced one another a ton.
Oh, yeah.
Very prominently, you have The Magnificent Seven, which was a remake of Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai, and A Fistful of Dollars, which was a remake of Yojimbo. But when you flip that around, Kurosawa himself was very influenced by early American films that he saw, and even Yojimbo's kind of based upon Red Harvest. So there's an interesting, like, circular interplay there between the two.
It's eerie when you play, like, scenes from Yojimbo, and then, like, you just literally put the exact same scene on from Fistful of Dollars, and it's like exactly the same scene, shot the same, everything about it's the same, just Clint Eastwood's in one and not in the other.
So that's as far as, like, broader aspects. So then let's talk about, like, themes. Mm-hmm. And by the way, if you guys have anything to add to anything I'm saying, just jump in
I
there.
will.
Okay.
You're doing a good, thorough job.
He's very thorough.
I was waiting for you to say the next part.
He's a good man.
Thorough.
And thorough.
So if we talk about themes of these films, often there's a portrayal of like the conquest of the wilderness, man versus nature, the conquering of nature, the settling of land. Often that leads into concepts and themes that are pretty taboo these days because it gets into sort of the taking of the land of Native Americans.
Well, this is very much during the time of Manifest Destiny.
And
so
many other injustices that America as a nation carried out during those times.
Yeah, it seems like no film genre was out some sort of problematic aspect.
I think, though, like the best Westerns, that not like the hotel chain, but I think some of the
Those definitely are not the best ones.
no, I think some of the best Westerns that usually come to mind, though, I think certain generations will disagree as to what those Westerns will be, but to me, the ones that are always my favorite that I think are just such solid films are the ones that almost acknowledge that
Me too, man.
fact, like the John Wayne stuff. I mean, I've ranted about him enough. We probably killed every listener that we had for that. But like that very firmly was in the camp of like, oh, Indian bad, white man good kind of a thing. But then you take like the Clint Eastwood films that come out and
right, they're much more nothing's black and white in this.
No, everything's gray, and everybody seems to realize, like, we're kind of doing a shitty thing here, and that when you get revenge paid upon you by maybe a Native American or somebody from Mexico, like, you're like, well, you kind of, yeah.
So the Western often depicts a society that's organized around codes of honor, both personal and of like the land or that area. What you might call frontier justice often will be dispensed or resolved through gunfights. Often those will be played out through depictions of feuds or things like people seeking personal revenge or vengeance against someone who has wronged them personally. The depiction of personal justice in Westerns contrasts sharply with other justice systems that would be organized around rationalistic, abstract laws that would exist in cities, where thereby with those laws the social order would be maintained. But yeah, you don't find that in these Western settings.
Right.
It steps away from the idea of like laws in courtrooms that can typically adjudicate all that kind of stuff.
And it's so, like, I mean, the Wild West wasn't nearly as wild as people think it was. And that's the funny part, because it's all based on mythology, basically.
Right, and romanticized. Yeah.
Because most towns had, firearms ordinance. You couldn't just bring your guns into town,
What are you trying to say? What are you trying to say, Jason?
And gunfights were so rare.
I mean, we do historically know that that the justice system was not quite as black and white as it was like in larger cities back east. There was much more like, he said you did this, they saw it, sorry.
Yeah.
That's how it is. But that's mostly because you didn't have these towns that were solidified yet, like as there were no states yet here. So these are settlements. The settlements still fall under the jurisdiction of the next biggest town. So you can't just if there's a crime in your town, it would take way too long to try to go bring in a judge, have the trial. So essentially, you did have this form of renegade justice that tried to rely as much on the law as possible, but most of the people who were trying them weren't lawyers.
Right.
So historically, we know that's true, and we do know that there were a lot of people who were in trouble in the east.
Oh yeah, flee out west.
That would flee out west just to kind of run away. So that kind of...
And there's plenty of film plots that are exactly that plot.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
From either side.
So historically, we do know that kind of plays into the, quote, Wild West, making it so dangerous.
And so to make a connection from this idea of the Wild West and what I was talking about, like how we as America, a country, don't really have like all this history to like romanticize and pull upon, a lot of people have suggested that the Wild West cowboy is kind of spun off of as a literary descendant from things like the knight errant, who would be like the central character in Arthurian romances. So like just like a gunfighter that would wander about the knight errant, and earlier European tales or poetry would wander place to place by horse, fight various villains, and they had no fixed social structures that they were held to, just some sort of personal code of honor that they upheld. Mm-hmm. And same thing, they would go forward, they would often rescue damsels in distress or solve problems in the areas they came upon. And equally, if we then jump back over to the samurai film, that's very akin to this idea of the Ronin, the wandering samurai.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Most of the tales that we have that come from the West are from writers from the big city who travel out to basically get ideas, to then sell penny dreadfuls or whatever.
So sensationalized and everything.
And it becomes a joke to people throughout history that what will they write about me, Mm-hmm. So you have to know that those guys, those writers, are heavily influenced by what they've read.
Oh yeah.
If they're educated, which I'm sure they are, if they're out there writing. So they're trying to make it the same thing that they've read and really build it up, when I'm sure it probably really sucked to live in the West at that time.
Likely, yeah.
You die of dysentery.
Yes, the Oregon Trail classic.
Yeah.
So I guess final thing, if you guys don't have anything else to add as far as like elements or themes broadly.
Not at the moment.
Very thorough.
I will take us on a whirlwind through the history of this genre.
Okay.
As best I can.
Mm-hmm.
So we know from where it started, Western films were enormously popular during the silent film era, With the advent of sound in 1927 and into 28, most major Hollywood studios rapidly abandoned the Western to focus on other projects, and the idea of Westerns were kind of left to smaller studios and producers that would operate on a lower budget. Over the intervening years in the 30s, these smaller organizations turned out countless low-budget features and serials, and by the late 1930s, Western films were generally regarded as a pulp genre in Hollywood. It was something you'd kind of, shoot out to make some money, but not something that you would consider like important.
Much like the horror genre.
Yes, we know that all too well. But its popularity was dramatically revived in 1939 by a big-budget studio production like Dodge City, and then John Ford's landmark Western Stagecoach, which, there's John Wayne for you.
Yeah.
Michael, sorry.
We can't talk about Westerns.
Oh, no. I mean, they're synonymous, so you can't really take it away.
So off the backs of films like that, and they just had this huge surge in popularity, they continued to be put into production, and they rose and rose in popularity until a peak in the 1950s, when at that time, the number of Western films being produced outnumbered all other genres combined, which is crazy if you think about it.
That is crazy.
So in general, this period from the late 30s on into the 60s is often coined by people as the golden age of the Western. It's epitomized by the works of different directors in prominent films, and it ranges from things like Stagecoach, which I mentioned in 39, The Gunfighter from 1950, High Noon in 52, 3:10 to Yuma in 57, The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance in 62, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly in 66, and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid in 69. There are thousands of other films I could list.
Yes.
That's just a sampling to shoot around about if you want to check some of those out.
Shoot a roundabout.
During this time, various subgenres also came into existence where they kind of split from the broader formula of what a Western was and focused in on something else. You've got things like the singing cowboy films, comedy Westerns, spaghetti Westerns, which of course we love, very much so. Even spun out of those, they would do a focus more on like the Mexican Revolution area, and they had Zapata films. In the 1960s and then moving into the 70s, the Western genre got reinvented by a lot of filmmakers into what is known as the revisionist Western. And this is kind of what you were talking about, Michael. It's often coined to be like the anti-Western, which is where in the 60s, as the Hays Code restrictions got relaxed, they kind of looked back at this mythical and romantic idea and wanted to make films that would subvert that and present a more realistic view of what life in the Old West would be like. And that led to films, yes, very shitty.
Spoiler.
And that led to films like Hombre in 67 and The Wild Bunch in 69.
Wild Bunch is great.
good.
I love the Wild
Yeah.
Bunch.
Often these films are sometimes called psychological Westerns because they will very, very much focus on one character and kind of their mentality and what they go through. And usually through the expense of like the action and thrills that you would normally have in a Western, they come out the other end maybe a little more scarred than you would think. One more I wanted to mention, just for fun. In that shift of the 60s to the 70s, there was a genre that came forth that got coined as acid Western. Now, this was associated with filmmakers like Dennis Hopper, Jim McBride, Rudy Wurlitzer, and kind of the trademark one to me, I think, is El Topo from 1970 by Alejandro Jodorowsky.
Yeah, that's a trip, all right.
They mix elements of surrealism and psychedelia into like the standard story of a Western to just do real weird stuff.
Yeah.
But man, they're fun. Michael, you would probably hate them.
El Topo is like one of those pinnacle midnight movies. Yeah, it's
Incredible.
yeah.
I've always meant to watch it, and then I end up like, I don't think I'm in the mood for that.
You got to be ready for it.
Got to be in the mood, that's for sure.
So moving from the 70s on into the 80s, the genre kind of died down a little bit. Big budget moved on to like other things besides Westerns. However, later on, there was a handful of films that came out that kind of shot them back into relevance. One of which is the movie we're talking about today, Silverado.
Indeed.
So let's see what it was. Oh, in 1980, there was a epic Western called Heaven's Gate, and it had this notorious financial failure that just totally flopped.
Famous flop.
And when
Ended
that
Michael Cimino's career.
Yeah. And when that happened, like, for Hollywood, that was like, the Western is done. Don't make them. They won't make any money. It's over. But then in 85, kind of in and around that year, it just chained off all these films. You had Pale Rider in 85, Lust in the Dust in 84, Rustler's Rhapsody in 85, Three Amigos in 86, and then, of course, our film Silverado was 85. So all these films kind of hit like right in the same handful of years, and all of them performed well. And it really like revitalized the interest in Westerns.
Did Lust in the Dust perform well? The
don't
one
know.
with Divine?
I don't know. But to us, maybe, but the point was, it was there at that
Yes,
time.
it was
with
there. And it
everything
was a
else.
Western, yes.
Yeah, and so that shot it back up into popularity, and kind of continuing forward, I guess what would you say, it's probably not been like a super prominent genre, but there's always films coming out.
Yeah,
are Westerns.
Definitely a handful of years.
Well, it's interesting. What most happen now are kind of the straight to Redbox kind of Westerns. They seem to be super cheap to make.
It's almost gone back to that pulp designation.
Yeah,
again.
that or they're really art house.
They're like, there's like a country singer, Trace Adkins, that shows up in a lot of them, and you're like, oh fuck, man, what are you like? Okay, I guess you're an actor now. But if you ever try to watch these are very much catering to a specific audience that is like, yeah, I just want to watch some Westerns today. They're bad. They're real bad.
That's
like
most movies.
But every now and
I
again,
know.
there is kind of like a big budget push that comes out, like the True Grit remake. That was a big deal,
That's
Yeah.
pretty good, too.
and that film's amazing. I think, especially compared to the original.
Yeah, I mean, I'd take that one over the original any day. I mean,
And because we do regularly deal in horror, we should say that horror westerns are their own subgenre as well.
there's not nearly enough of those, though, man.
No.
The one I'll always throw out if people are curious is Bone Tomahawk. That's definitely worth a watch.
Bone Tomahawk is amazing. It
I'd
is
also
so
throw
good.
out the Burrowers.
The Burrowers, and they're both just as much a Western as they are a horror film.
Right, you
too.
couldn't
Yeah.
like divorce either part from it.
The
But
setting is intrinsic to the horror.
Bone Tomahawk is fucking great.
it's great.
It's just, it's fantastic. Kurt Russell's just awesome in it.
So
Just
that to me,
cast.
if you are listening and you've only been on board for the horror, maybe check one of those out and see if it can be your inroad into this as a genre.
I would say a lot of people probably watched Hateful Eight, you know, because of Tarantino's.
That's actually a really good one. That was Tarantino's best movie in a long time.
I mean, yeah.
And then Django Unchained was a big deal too when it came out.
It was.
Yeah.
A little less successful, in my opinion, but not a bad movie at all.
And
I like
then
them both.
they're kind of like smattered in between. Like it seems like though a lot of times when a Western is taken seriously, it tends to win an Oscar. You
Yeah.
know, like
Unforgiven.
yeah, Unforgiven's fantastic.
Which that's a great like deconstruction of
Oh,
everything about like westerns.
It's a perfect movie.
Cold Mountain is in there.
Mm-hmm.
Even Brokeback Mountain. You know, like we were discussing when we start talking about things being neo-Western, like
Yeah,
this
I
term.
cut that out of my notes because I figured it would be its own discussion.
Well, this term that gets thrown out about like modern films that people classify as a Western, but they don't fit the traditional tropes of a Western. And like the one that you brought up, Dustin, was people saying "No Country for Old Men's" a Western. Jason and I immediately called bullshit on it.
Well, it's as much a neo-noir, which is its own
Yeah.
nebulous category.
Yeah.
It's,
But,
it's
like-
just set in the West. It could be set anywhere and you can still tell the same story.
And so I think that kind of, and then, but if I put Brokeback Mountain on that, I'm not sure that it would. If you took the locale out of that film, I don't think it would work as well. Mostly because they're dealing with the machismo.
Right.
Of,
That's part of the whole taboo of their relationship is that
right.
the
They could
kind
be
of
like
people they
construction
are.
workers or something, you know.
I don't know. But we should probably go ahead and start jumping into our
Yeah.
film.
So there's your whirlwind background on westerns. I hope I did enough justice.
I mean, we're
let's
going to
about
talk.
Silverado.
We're going to talk more about them over the next.
Yeah,
couple
there's plenty of
films
time to
that-
hit all the little spots.
that each
there.
one of us talk. So
So what is this movie, Michael?
mine, Silverado, 1985, written by the legendary Lawrence Kasdan.
Who?
Lawrence Kasdan. If you don't know Lawrence Kasdan, let me tell you about a movie that I think you all have probably seen.
The Force Awakens.
Let's not talk about that one.
And Solo, a Star Wars story.
Okay, now that gets a bad rap.
I liked it. I like it.
Nothing wrong with Solo for me. But most
Yeah, I
importantly,
agree. I
the
agree
writer
totally.
of Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark. He's also the writer of The Big Chill.
Empire Strikes Back. Are you getting to that one?
Yeah, we're getting there.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you could look at the dude's list and it's like so many big films that we grew up on. Like they're all right here. But Silverado focuses on a couple of guys who've kind of had a rough past.
Do you want me to read the synopsis?
Yeah, go ahead and give it.
Okay.
Since I fucked it up already.
Every time.
Couple of guys.
I actually didn't bring the synopsis because I knew it was your film.
Oh, well, that's where you fucked up.
Oh my god.
Well, we basically start off with
How dare I suspect you to do
We
that?
start off like all good Western shit with a fucking shootout. Like immediately, bam.
we've got starring in this film Kevin Kline, who you don't particularly think of as someone from a Western because we're going to throw out the Wild Wild West out of that. We're just
This cast is amazing. This cast is...
Here's the synopsis.
Oh.
I've settled this problem.
okay. Thank
Do
you.
it.
Four unwitting heroes cross paths on their journey to the sleepy town of Silverado. Little do they know that the town where their family and friends reside has been taken over by a corrupt sheriff and a murderous posse. It's up to the sharpshooting foursome to save the day, but first they have to break each other out of jail and learn who their real friends are.
Yeah.
So when we first come across our main character, Peyton, Peyton is...
We start with Emmett, right?
Yeah, we start
Yeah.
with Emmett. He's in the shack.
Emmett is Scott Glenn, which the last episode, Jason was like, I think it's got one of the Carradines in it because Scott Glenn is who you cast if you wanted David Carradine and you couldn't afford David Carradine.
Or is that the other way around? It's his hair. His hair looks just
And his
like
facial
David
structure,
Carradine.
they're
Yeah.
very, very similar.
Yeah.
But yeah, you get this super killer shootout. He's in a shack, basically, and these guys are starting
It is not a love shack.
it might have been. But people are starting to surround him, and he's just like doing his awesome, typical cowboy, like,
Yeah, blows them all away.
shoot from the hip, always knows where they are, firing away.
And he takes off with one of their horses, which becomes an important plot point later.
Right. And that as he's traveling through now, he comes across Peyton.
Which is one of the weirdest intros ever for a character, I think.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I like is that he's tied up in his Union suit out in the desert.
With like pink long johns.
Yeah, it's his
Yeah.
Union suit. It's got a flap in
totally-
the back for you to shit from.
Is that what it's called?
A Union suit, yes.
I've never heard that before.
You fucking serious?
I am serious.
I have also never heard that before.
Okay.
Is this a you thing? Is this
No.
like a Cypher
This is-
family thing?
No, this is a...
He goes home and he has a whole closet full of nothing but these.
I've always wanted a Union suit. Okay, a Union suit. If you pull this up, a Wikipedia, Union suit is a type of one-piece long underwear most associated with menswear in the late 19th and 20th centuries.
I thought they were just called like long johns or something.
No, that comes later. These are called Union suits.
Oh, okay.
Anyways,
Because long johns don't have the poop flap, right?
Correct.
Okay.
he comes across this guy. He's tied up out there. No supplies, nothing.
Yeah, he's badly like sunburned. He's just laying there. You think maybe he's dead.
It's Kevin Kline. He's not dead.
He's the main character.
So we quickly find out that they are friends.
Or they
though?
become friends.
They become
Yeah.
friends, right?
They don't know each other. They're strangers.
Well, but yeah, you guys need to walk through this better than I do. 'Cause
Oh my god. Okay, so right.
You know I'm bad at like recalling things other than minor trivia.
He rescues Kevin Kline's character Peyton, who says that he was met up with some other people on the trail, rode with them, and they jumped him and took his shit and left him to die.
Right.
Yep.
They took his horse, which he loves, he's most upset about, and his hat.
Which I struggled with that like plot hookup because there's the Cannibal the Musical by Matt Stone and Trey Parker, which is like technically a musical western that's also a comedy western. I fucking love it and it's hilarious. But the main character in that, he's like obsessed with his horse.
Maybe they cribbed that off Silverado.
Well, already what I think Silverado is doing and letting you know is this is just as much of an homage film to the golden age of westerns.
Yep.
Because so many of the things, they subvert a lot of the expectations of typical plot points, but I think what Peyton is trying to suggest here is that, where they took my hat, it's always like the good guy never loses his hat. In the classic westerns, he could be shot at, fall off a horse, and if his hat comes off, it's always there. So, and there was oftentimes, a very strong bond between the cowboy and his horse. They'd often have, don't raise your eyebrow like that. It's not that kind of a strong bond.
Well, no, you think of like the Lone Ranger, right?
Yeah. Like Hi-Ho Silver and then Trigger, I think, is the Lone Ranger's
No, Silver is Lone Rangers.
Yeah.
Trigger was Hopalong Cassidy, maybe?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
I don't know.
But, you know.
That's old-timer stuff.
But the horse isn't always important.
Yeah, look at
To the main character. It's typically a classic thing. And so we've already subverted that now with our hero of the film being left for dead. They took his horse, they took his hat, everything that makes him the hero.
Yeah, but Emmett helps him up, takes him to town. I think it's to Turley? Is the town they go to?
Turley's the first town they go
Yep.
to, yes.
And I love this scene because when he shows up, he's still in his Union suit.
Everyone's just kind of looking at him funny.
Just standing in the middle of the town.
It's Roy Rogers who had Trigger.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right.
Roy
Okay.
Rogers, of course.
Keep me going. Since
So they get into town.
suck at
Oh my
plots.
god. They get into town.
I just pick the movies. You guys do the work, okay?
And we learn that Emmett's there to find his brother, Jake.
Played by very young Kevin Costner in possibly... It's not his first role, but it's his first big role.
This is one of the things I like about this movie and Lawrence Kasdan in general. It's such a good screenplay. Because they come into town and you see they're putting up gallows. They're going to hang somebody, right? Okay,
Yeah.
well, that probably happens a lot around here, whatever. It's not really remarked upon. It's just something you see. That comes up later, though. You know, he's always planting these little seeds. That come
There's
up
always a
later.
lot of setup, payoff going on.
Right,
In
which
this
I think a lot of modern films they just don't do. They'll tell, they won't show.
Sometimes, though, these require an intelligent audience
No.
to pick up...
I mean, this was a mainstream Hollywood film.
Yeah.
It's not like an art movie or
And it's
anything.
really, the plot itself is straightforward, you would say.
But I think to drop foreshadowing hints throughout a film is lost because what now we get with foreshadowing is they'll give us a flashback.
Mm-hmm.
You know, remember? They'll actually give a fucking flashback of something you just saw 40 minutes ago so that you make sure that you know. It's like, God, I'm not fucking idiot. I am because I don't remember how to walk you through the plot of this movie very well. But
Well, Payton sees his horse.
Yep.
Yeah.
Tied up.
Yeah. So he goes over there, and he goes to get a gun. It's the first thing he does. He goes into a shop.
Someone tosses him, Emmett tosses him a little money, I think, to get clothes or...
That's right.
Yeah.
He tosses him coin to go get some clothes. He goes in and he tries to take a gun. Shop owner stops him.
Yeah, I love the scene because he picks up the nicest gun that's in there.
Yeah. And then
he's like, how much is it? And it's way more than he can afford. And he's like, well, how much is it to rent it?
he can't get a bit of rent guns. Hey, what will this get me? And it gives him this revolver that's falling apart. It already looks like an antique.
right.
But he takes it and he uses it.
Yeah, he immediately just marches out there and shoots the guy down.
Yeah, because the guy sees Peyton on his horse and he starts riding toward him. And he's shooting the whole way. And he shoots at the crotch of his Union suit, which is hilarious.
We should say there's a lot of comedy built into this film.
Yeah.
But it's that Raiders of the Lost Ark comedy, it's not slapstick.
No, I mean, it's still smart comedy.
Yeah.
It doesn't insult your intelligence.
It's enough in there just to give you a laugh.
And even with this crappy old gun, Peyton takes him down.
And now this is where Peyton gets arrested, correct?
Incorrect.
Okay, keep going. God damn it.
Incorrect.
I swear I watched it.
But he gets his horse, and he's loving on his horse and everything. And yeah, the law comes out, and they're asking him all these questions.
Yeah, they meet is it Sheriff Langston, I think.
Yes.
Which is played by John Cleese.
John Cleese, Sheriff Langston. And also in this town, they run into, importantly, one of Peyton's
old
associates.
Friends. Yep.
Played by Brian Dennehy. What's his character's name? I can't recall.
Oh, shit. Damn it. I had it all pulled up.
There's a lot of characters in this film.
There's a shit ton of characters. And some of them are people that you've seen many times in films that just pop up and have a bit role.
Cobb.
Yeah,
That's his name,
Cobb, yes.
Yeah. And they have a little encounter, and you can tell there's some friction there.
We learn later that Cobb and Peyton have a past.
Yeah, and all of this movie just drops in these little hints every now and then, because there's a lot of characters and there's a lot of backstories, but it does a really good job of drip feeding you everything you need to know, so you don't really get confused.
Right.
Do you think so?
I think so. I didn't get confused watching it. It's kind of hard to describe because it's actually a really intricate screenplay.
There are times where I think Silverado, because I think it differs so much, in the way it's written that I think it can subvert your expectations, and I think you can get lost if you're not careful.
I didn't get lost.
Well, for sure.
I've got some hot takes that we're going to get to.
Ooh, okay.
You're an intelligent bastard.
One of the things we also learned a little bit about Emmett earlier was that he did some time in Leavenworth.
Yep.
So that's a little piece of information we learn more about later.
And we know that his brother Jake is locked up because he killed a man, which he swears was in self-defense.
Yes. And he's the man they're building the gallows for to hang the next day.
This is a Kevin Costner performance that you haven't seen.
He's so good in this.
Yet he didn't do this ever again.
He wasn't. This was like his first big movie. He had shot scenes for The Big Chill, also with that Lawrence Kasdan made.
Yeah.
Also with Jeff Goldblum was in The Big Chill. He shows up here.
So was Kevin Kline.
Yeah, Kevin Kline was in The Big Chill. And like this was his first big movie, and he's great. I mean, you could see why he became so big.
He's just like he's playing this young hotshot, like very cocky,
but likable. He's not an asshole.
Oh yeah, no, he's not an ass. Well,
I found him to be very obnoxious. I'll
Yeah,
be
but
honest.
it wasn't in a irritating, mean way, though. It's not like, okay, like here's an example. Something I didn't like about, what was it, The Amazing Spider-Man, Andrew Garfield. Because to me, he played Spider-Man as an asshole, like a complete asshole.
Uh-oh.
And he wasn't like fun or funny.
that's Dustin's favorite.
Yeah, he's my favorite Spider-Man.
I know he is. You love Andrew Garfield. I know. But
I mean, that is Spider-Man, though. He quips and
he
crap
quips,
talks.
but he came across as a jerk. And to me, Spider-Man was never a jerk.
No, I don't think so, man.
But maybe I haven't, read enough Spider-Man comics or any Spider-Man comics. But anyway.
Because, like, the Amazing Spider-Man 2, the first time he fights Electro, he's, like, pleading with him to, like, let me help you, let me fix this. That's, like, Spider-Man to me, is, like, even when he's fighting, he's trying to, like, help the person.
Okay, well, that was the second one. But anyway.
Okay,
Anyway.
well, Jake though I think is supposed to be slightly annoying. Like I think his character is supposed to be because he's the one who's always getting himself into trouble.
Yeah, but he has a good heart.
He's firing his mouth off before, and we see that there's a really fun scene of how Kevin Kline gets out of jail because he ends up landing himself in jail with Jake. But there's a really fun scene of how they end up getting out.
Right, he finds the dude with his hat, right? And doesn't he shoot him?
Yeah.
And that's how he gets arrested finally and put in prison.
So while he's in the cell with Jake is like hooping and hollering and shit and like swinging all over the damn place.
Yeah, he starts like doing jungle gym stuff on top of the bars.
It's just really...
I swear to God, I bet that was improvised.
Probably.
That looked like something that wasn't scripted, and he just started doing it.
One thing we should talk about before we go through this prison break thing, our fourth character gets introduced.
Yes, they
during
meet,
this
they
too.
meet Mal in the...
Played by Danny Glover, who to me was like far and away my favorite character in the film.
Oh, he's great.
Pre-Lethal Weapon Danny Glover too.
Yeah, so it's Emmett and Peyton are sitting down having, I guess it's breakfast. I don't know what it is. They're having a meal.
They're in the saloon.
In the saloon, Danny Glover comes in, and of course, they got to do the whole racist thing, because a lot of people probably were pretty racist still back then.
Yeah.
Although a large percentage of cowboys actually were black and Mexican.
Yeah, but this is
I know. Right.
not cowboys.
So they give
stuff,
him a hard time. And
I love how he says he was like, I'm just looking for a drink and a bed to sleep in.
yeah. No, he was wanting a beer and whiskey. So he hadn't drank in like 11 days or something like that. He hadn't had a whiskey. And yeah, I think this is where we meet John Cleese the first time, actually.
Yes.
Because the guys are giving Danny Glover and Mal a hard time. He kicks their ass. That's when the sheriff comes in. He's like, what's going on here?
Emmett kind of vouches for him, right?
Emmett does vouch for him because he says, yeah, he was jumped. And I love John Cleese here, too. He's great. He has a line. What's the line? It's, what's all this then, I think, which is something he would always say as his police officer character from Monty Python.
Oh, yeah. I thought it sounded familiar.
Yeah.
He doesn't deliver it quite the same way,
Right.
but yeah, it's a nice nod. Oh, God, I'm so bad at...
Well, Langston, the sheriff, John Cleese, tells him, Mal, Danny Glover, to get the hell out of town.
Yep.
Right.
Just go.
Which is more set up for later.
Yes. So he's like, fine, whatever. Has a shot of whiskey and he leaves.
So Peyton's in jail, and we learn that Emmett's got this whole plan to spring his brother out
Yeah.
and escape.
It's a good plan.
I love how it plays out because it's like it just kind of gets into night, and then this kid kind of bursts in and is like, Sheriff, come quick.
And there's a funny scene before that where you see Langston sitting at a chessboard, and he's got one of his deputies across from him who looks very intently down on the board. Langston makes a move and then turns the chessboard around, and he's playing himself. It's just a great little visual gag.
Well, should we talk about Langston as a character for a second? Because it struck me weird because he's like British, right?
Yes.
But he's been appointed sheriff of the town.
Yes.
And it's so weird and so out of place in a
think?
way. I think so.
I don't know. He's an immigrant. America's built on immigrants.
Not throwing
Quite
away-
literally in some cases.
Not throwing away my shot, man.
It just seemed weird to me.
Immigrants get the job done.
I actually, so not to be my typical, historically it's not uncommon. Because if he was well connected to someone, and so if he came seeking fortune, and he was well connected, most people didn't find fortune.
He's just so over the top and so goofy. It just struck me weird.
Well, and I think one of the things I read about this film and Kasdan when he was making the film was that he had it written, but so much of it changed once the casting came about. So, like, once he started acquiring actors that were willing to come and do the film, there were people that he loved and admired and wanted to work with. A lot of the script ended up kind of forming around those actors.
I'm sure there was a lot of ad-libbing going on.
And I think one of the characters that you see that the most with is when we meet Jeff Goldblum's character later. He doesn't do shit.
No.
He didn't do shit in the movie. But it's
I
like
got a lot of quibbles about his character.
But it's like, there's Jeff Goldblum. He was in The Big Chill. You know, he'd already worked with Kasdan. He's very charismatic. He's Jeff Goldblum. Of course, put him in the movie. But he didn't give anything to do. So,
and another setup thing. God, there's so much setup stuff in this first little area.
Oh, yeah.
There's like a wagon train that's heading out.
headed to Silverado.
Headed to Silverado. There's some land out around there that they're going to settle. And there's this whole thing with these two characters that they're paying to be their guides.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they show them, they have this like chest of money that they're going to pay them later with.
Yeah, because Peyton and Emmett are mistaken for part of this wagon train. So they were kind of around to see this transaction. You know, this guy's flashing all this money and shit like that.
And that's a typical Western trope, too, though.
Well, yeah.
Is that you see, you know, they need protection. They need somebody to guide them through. We've scrounged up all the money we've got. And we paid it all to them, and they're going to double-cross us.
It's also a well-worn and time-honored D&D.
Yeah, first level adventure.
And that pays off later, right?
Yeah, this movie is like 2 hours long, and the first hour is all just like set up before they ever get to Silverado.
Yeah. It's usually what a first act is. Set up.
I mean, the first act is almost like a film unto itself.
Well, so when...
They spring Jake.
And I love the scene.
Emmett sets fire to the gallows.
Yes.
But I love the scene of how they get out of the jail cell is that Peyton is standing there in this huge...
He's got a big coat.
Yeah, this huge coat that looks way too big on him. And the dude comes to get Jake out.
The
and
deputy.
Yeah,
He
he's
seemingly
like,
vanished.
yeah, he's like, where is he? I know he's in here. And you keep waiting because you've set it up that he's like climbing the ceiling. You keep waiting for him to drop down from the ceiling.
Yeah.
But he ends up like trying to cuff Peyton through the bars so he can't start shit.
Because the cop thinks he's under the bed. And we also saw Jake getting under the bed earlier.
Everything's a setup for this gag, and then Jake ends up being inside the coat with Peyton.
He's behind Peyton, yeah.
And reaches out and just punches the dude. And it's just such a funny setup because it's not something that you were expecting to happen. But I don't know. To me,
that's a great little moment.
To me, it sets up the tone. I think it sets the whole tone of the movie.
I think so, yeah.
Because I struggled when I picked Silverado because it's not a badass Western. You know, like it has moments where there's some really badass characters that do badass things.
Right,
but
it's not a fun movie.
Yeah, it's a kind of more of an adventure
I would say adventure, yeah.
type
That's kind of
film
what I would tag it as.
rather than like the typical gritty Western that would be associated with the time period. So anyway,
They go on the run, the three of them, and Langston's posse kind of sets out after them,
Yes.
chase them down.
so as Langston's chasing them, all of a sudden they get shot at, and it's by someone who is very accurate. and one of the guys says something to Langston. They slow up because they're bombarded by this.
Yeah,
and
it's like tree branches are getting shot, rocks are getting shot and causing little avalanches and stuff like that or whatever.
And one of the deputies to Langston says something like, well, he ain't hit a damn thing yet.
Yeah.
And Langston says he's hit everything he's wanted to.
Yeah, he's hit everything he's aimed at.
Yeah. And then the next scene you see
his hat
goes flying off. And he says, this is where my jurisdiction ends today. And turns around and realizes it's not worth whatever they're getting into.
Tells the deputy to get his hat.
And it turns out to be Mal.
Yep.
Returning the favor.
Yeah, who is returning the favor for them sticking up for him, and he's hiding up in the rocks. Whatnot.
And they learn that they're all kind of headed to Silverado.
Yep.
Right. Each has different purposes for going.
So they decide to ride together, and we get the typical like classic Western where it's like the four of them riding side by side and the music swelling.
Which we should say, I think that I'm pretty sure this won an Oscar for Best Score.
It did.
So the music is pretty epic here.
It's very, very classical.
Bruce Broughton, I think.
Yeah, Bruce Broughton, that's it.
Yeah, okay. But yeah, along the way, this is where they come across that wagon train again.
Yep.
Yeah, we crash back into that plot line.
And we learn...
Oh, and this movie is full of great actors. One of the wagon train leader is Brian James.
Yeah.
Who you would know from Blade Runner.
Oh, yes, okay. Mm-hmm. There's so many people in this movie...
The horror show, Lance Henriksen.
that you see them and you're like, I know that guy.
Yeah.
I wonder what he's been in. But they don't make them main characters, so you're just like...
Right.
You see them for a scene and then they're gone.
And Rosanna Arquette is part of this wagon train as well.
She is. That's when they find out that they've pretty much been double-crossed.
Yeah, it turns out their guides swindled them.
Those fishy dudes we saw earlier were, in fact, fishy.
Yeah. They were working for kind of with another group, like a bigger group.
Yeah, some bandits, you would say.
Yeah, some bandits, some bad hombres, I guess. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said it. I
want an audio clip of just that.
Bad hombres.
Fantastic. So being the good people that they are, our heroes decide to... We'll get that for you. We will go back and get that chest of gold for you.
But I'm sure there's also some, selfish... It's not fully altruistic.
Oh,
I think
the way this plays out, it's almost like a Looney Tunes skit in a way.
But I love this
which
scene.
is why it's great.
Because it's really like Emmett just kind of rides in there. Is it Emmett? I think.
Yeah.
Emmett, yeah. Well,
yeah.
also the husband of Rosanna Arquette goes with him because he doesn't trust them, which rightfully so.
Fair.
They're going to
Yeah.
get the chest and just take off. Who says they're going to bring it back to us?
But I
they
really
leave Jake behind. And he has that great line where he says, "Well, if you don't come back, you can keep my brother."
Well, they make jokes about like that they wouldn't leave him with Rosanna Arquette. Like a pretty woman like that, you wouldn't want to leave her side or whatever. But I love this bit.
You know that guy's dead too. As soon as he gets on his horse and comes with him, he's fucking dead.
Yeah.
He may as well just kill himself right now.
I love this gag because Emmett goes riding into this bandit camp. Like they've already seen the camp. They know what they're looking at.
They scouted. It's kind of like in a little section beneath some like hills.
Emmett goes running into this camp. And he's riding into this camp, dives off of his horse, like gets down. He's
got Peyton draped on the horse behind him.
Yeah, he's like, everybody get down. They're after me.
They're coming.
They're coming. And there's a great character actor who is leading this posse. It's James Gammon.
Yeah.
Who, I mean,
you've seen him.
I don't know how many times I watched Major League growing up.
Oh yeah.
But he's the coach from Major League, and he's just classic, dude. You've seen him in everything. But everybody's like looking around, like looking at him, like, what the hell? Like, what is going on? But Emmett is just selling this thing so hard.
They robbed the bank, and they got a posse coming at him, and the guy's like, "You brought a posse down here."
And my favorite is when Emmett starts rattling off names.
Yeah.
And he's
you
like,
know those fellas.
You know those guys. And then eventually they're like, I don't know any of those names. So about this time is when Mal and the husband
start shooting.
And it's very clear that it's just two guys.
Yeah, the guys, I think it's just a couple of guys up there.
But Emmett keeps selling this, and Emmett's like, y'all hang out, cover me, I'm gonna run. And I love that one dude, he was one of the guys who was leading I think he was one of the guys who was supposed to be leading the wagon train.
Yeah, the one who actually stole
And he's like, man, he's a brave fella.
And meanwhile, Peyton is like tying a rope to the chest.
Yeah.
Right.
Because conveniently the horse is like stopped right by the wagon
Sure.
it's on.
Oh shit!
It's the first time.
Damn. But then it all plays out. Chaos ensues or whatever, and then they take off and
Right,
drag the chest, and classic train heist type thing. I that scene was pointless to a sense, but I loved it. It was just such a funny gag. Yeah. And I think but it also sets up the characters of like, this is how they get through. They use their wits more than just like shooting everybody around and killing them to come back and take it.
Right, and that it demonstrates that they're good people.
Yeah.
No,
I love that scene.
And then the husband gets shot.
Yeah.
Conveniently.
Yeah.
And I read that a lot of Rosanna Arquette's scenes got cut, but we don't even get a reaction. They don't like ride in with his body, and she's like, nothing is said of this again.
Well, the way, kind of what happens though with her is you get a different kind of reaction from her later when, I think it's Emmett, right? That comes up to her.
Peyton's courting her at first, it seems like. But
Yeah.
then later on, it's like her and Emmett. And there's definitely some scenes.
I read there was more
Yeah.
scenes that kind of focused on the Peyton relationship with her.
Yeah,
They kind of
there's like some love triangle that got cut out or something.
But she ends up making a statement, like that she wants to build something and make it grow, and men don't like that she has ambition, and that they just want her to
Be pretty.
just be pretty and be for them. And so for me, it kind of almost got implied that her husband was that way, and she's like, well, good riddance.
Yeah, maybe she's not so sad.
Yeah, I kind of got
Perhaps.
that impression from that, but yeah.
They help the settlers get to where they're going, and our four heroes part ways to go about their business.
Yes.
And this is where we get like more backstory drops, kind of on every single character.
Oh, yeah.
The first is Emmett and Jake. They visit their sister, whose husband is the land agent in the area, right?
Yes.
And he tells them that there's a rancher, Ethan McKendrick, who's trying to maintain an open range and sort of like dominate all of the territory and run everyone off.
And it was this rancher whose father Emmett had killed and gone to prison before.
Right.
And it was a self-defense kill. Like I don't remember the exact particulars of the story, but it wasn't like he was murdered. Emmett didn't murder him.
And the link up back to the start is that the men were trying to kill him in the shack were hired by McKendrick.
Yes, we find that out later. Yes.
McKendrick, that story, McKendrick's men and Cobb kind of got mishmashed to me. But I think they're supposed to, right?
Yeah, they're working
Cobb
together.
was just
They're
working for him.
They're
yeah.
all working together, but some of it kind of got a little confusing for me at times. Like
Yeah, a little bit.
They're-
It's murky.
yeah, it got murky. But then at the same time, if I stop and analyze it, I think, well, maybe it was murky.
I think it's just one of those things you just have to sit and wait and watch because it doesn't
Yeah.
tell you a lot up front. You just have to find things out as it goes.
Yeah, well, I ain't that smart.
So
Yes,
that's
you are.
so that's our brothers. Mal goes to see his father. He was trying to see him and his mother, but when he gets there, he learns that his mother's passed away.
The house is burned down.
House is burned down. They're destitute. The land's overrun by cattle, which is linking back to the McKendrick plot.
Because they want all this land for their big, massive herd of cattle.
Which we're gonna get again later. It's gonna pay off pretty fun.
And we learn that Mal's sister, Ray, has gone into Silverado, and she's taken up with like some gambler guy that's going around.
Well, yeah, it's implied that she went there to become a sex worker,
Yeah,
which she has.
and I think they imply that she's risen to more of a prominent role, like almost more of a madam type. That's kind of what they imply, I think, but it doesn't really matter.
So then Peyton actually goes into like Silverado proper, and that's where he finds this very nice saloon, because there's an earlier line he throws away where he loves saloons, basically.
Yeah, nothing like the smell of a saloon.
And he finds
I'm sure that wasn't such a great smell.
he finds an awesome saloon. They've got all kinds of gambling going on. It's a sweet place. He meets the woman that runs it. Stella.
Played by Linda Hunt.
One of the best characters in the film.
Oh,
She's great.
She's amazing.
She's always good.
Linda Hunt's fantastic in anything
Yeah.
she does.
They kind of hit it off. They're making friends. And then he learns that Cobb actually owns the place.
Yep.
And not only does he own the place, but he's also the sheriff of the town.
Yep.
So already, Peyton is like, I think Peyton is ready just to settle down and not like cause trouble, but already he doesn't like the situation.
He's asking for a job here.
Right.
And Stella says that, well, my co-owner over here, kind of tied to him. But Cobb takes care of that later when he accuses that guy of stealing and pushes him, fires him on the spot, pushes him out the hotel, and he comes back trying to kill Cobb, and Cobb guns him down immediately.
Yeah, self-defense.
Yeah.
So that lends to Peyton being able to get a job working here at the North Star, I think is what it's called.
Morning Star.
Morning Star, right. I think some of the best dialogue in the entire film is between Peyton and Stella. Mm-hmm. The relationship that they have is so...
They have great chemistry.
Yeah. You can tell it's just two great actors.
And I love it when we can have like a man and a woman and it not be romantic.
Right.
But they have like a lot of chemistry
friends.
And have a friendship. Yeah.
It's so funny too. Like there's some great little gags too that they do because Linda Hunt is a very short person, and so she walks. He's standing next to her in the saloon outside from behind the bar.
Yeah.
But she walks behind the bar, and suddenly now she's eye to eye with him, and he leans over and sees
like a
this
little ramp. Yeah.
and it's just such a great little gag. That's just I don't know. There's little things about Silverado that are just like I don't know, little charming gems that are just planted in the story. That while when I rewatched this, I'm not sure that I liked it as much as the first time I saw it, but it made me appreciate good writing, and it made me miss seeing little things like this put into films now.
Yeah, it says so much about her character.
Yeah, and something's that simple. And but yeah, we'll carry on now.
Also, while they're there, that's where we meet Slick, which is Jeff Goldblum's character, the gambler.
Yes, and that's just after, what's his, Shorty, Linda Hunt's partner, after he gets gunned down.
He doesn't matter.
Yeah. Slick comes right up, looks at the dead guy and says, "Hey, I'm here to gamble. Where's the saloon?"
He feels so out of place. Like it's just Jeff Goldblum. He doesn't feel like he's blended in at all.
He's got this like fur coat thing going, and you could tell he's dressed, extravagantly for the time.
And he, as much as I love Goldblum, and I seriously do, like I will watch anything the dude's in. I don't care how batshit crazy he is.
Yeah,
he's my batshit crazy.
Goldblum's great.
He just feels out of place here, though.
Yeah.
I like his character, so I don't mind him being here, and he does at least perform a function.
I just don't think they spend enough time on him that he's like a relevant player in what's going on.
I think he's ornamentation. He's one of the nice little things about this movie that just makes it a little bit more fun to watch. I love the scene where Peyton is having a little face-off with Jeff Fahey, another great actor.
Yeah.
Because they've got a history in there. Oh, yeah, right. It was Jeff Fahey's character and Jake. They were about to throw down.
Yes.
Because Jake was hanging out with
Amanda
Weiss from A Nightmare on Elm Street.
And he says, like, I just kissed her or something like that.
Yeah, right. And you see Jeff Goldblum reaching for that knife in his boot.
Right. Which gets delivered on.
Yeah, yeah. See that later. So I like his character. Is he superfluous? I don't think he does perform some functions. And it's fun to see him. So that doesn't bother me one bit.
Yep, so this is our status quo, and Cobb's kind of trying to push through McKendrick's dealings to take over all the land. And he's hoping that Peyton will just get like focused on the saloon and kind of stay
out
of the picture.
He even tells him just, stay out of it.
And one of the nights we even get like more of their backstory together finally, because they keep mentioning this thing about a dog.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, this is where they finally tell the story, right? That they did a job together, and I forget the whole dealing with the dog.
They ran in a group together, and it was like general outlaw stuff.
Yeah. Some stray dog came up. He started feeding it. It followed him. And it got tangled up with Jeff Fahey's character's horse. So he shot it.
But it didn't kill the dog.
That's his name, Tyree.
Yeah.
No. And Peyton stayed behind with the dog.
And that's what led to him getting arrested.
Yes.
And but then Peyton has a great line too, and he said, "Yeah, and the dog got me out."
The dog struck me.
Yeah.
And I love it when then he's telling the story, and you see Peyton walking up behind him, and you think it's going to be this ooh moment, sore spot or whatever. But then he doesn't even break in the story at all. He just keeps telling it. He looks back, sees Peyton, keeps telling the story.
And you see, Klein is so understated. Like I think he plays this character so understated that nothing is over the top with him. And you really get the sense, like, you kind of think, like, Payton's going to make some other comment, you know, and be like, that's not how it happened, or whatever.
Makes a joke.
But he makes a joke because he's the bigger man and he knows it. He knows, like, okay, I'm just going to, whatever gets me through. Not going to cause trouble. Don't want to go back to jail. You know.
Yeah.
And that ends up being his main storyline, you know, is like, how far will he let his friends be pushed around before he stands up to say, no, this isn't okay.
So McKendrick's plans escalate, and he sends some men to murder Ezra. Emmett.
Yeah.
Well, they murder Ezra, right?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Mal's dad.
Mal's dad.
My bad. Yes, Ezra. Right.
Because he was going to go into town and he was going to try to, like, rally them to do something, I think, about them running over the land.
That's right, yes.
But he never makes it because some of McKendrick's men intercept him and kill him.
Jump him, yeah.
Which Mal finds...
Ain't too happy about it.
Not too happy, no. Meanwhile, they kidnap Emmett's younger nephew because they attack their house, right? They go and raid it.
Then you find out they just do a quick little scene to show, like, all the land titles, you know, on the shelf before they burn the house down. But yeah, Emmett's...
And there is some development scenes they throw in there where they're kind of playing with the nephew.
Oh, yeah,
right,
sure.
right.
Yeah.
And Emmett's already
You
shown...
can tell they, like, care about the character a lot.
Emmett's already shown up in town, like, because the kid is on a horse.
Yeah.
And Emmett's already shown up in town and basically stares down McKendry's men and is like, no.
Yeah.
And one of them's even like, Emmett, I didn't know you was out. You know, like,
Yeah.
clearly Emmett's a badass, and they know it, and they don't want to cross him. But yeah, when they end up going after his aunt's house, they're basically trying to burn land deeds and land titles, and shit gets out of control there. They shoot...
They jump Emmett at one point. This is a great scene where he's out practicing because Emmett knows a fight's coming.
Yeah.
And he's got his rifle and he's shooting at a cactus and you're showing it from like his point of view basically. And it's like you don't see the cactus getting hit, and you're like, wow, he's not very good with that rifle. And you get a close up of the cactus, and he's shooting off the individual needles of the cactus.
Great scene too, where he's working on his draw, you know, and he's shooting a can up in the air and everything.
Yeah.
But the fun thing is
I love this guy's delivery. The dude that jumps out, McKendrick's man, and says, "You're empty, mister."
yeah,
He has such a look on his face. That dude is so happy to be there.
but this is one of those other times where Kasdan subverts the typical Western trope. Is you would normally see the hero practicing doing these things, and then he's going to get to use them.
Yep.
You know, we're going to see him gun down somebody, you know, with a quick draw, but they just waited him out. And
sure.
And they showed up. They roped him. They
run the horse over him.
You know, Kasdan also did, which is one that I would love to choose, but it's a series. It's a mini-series, so I can't choose it as a film. Kasdan also did Godless.
Oh, I've heard of that and I've never seen it.
Which is, I think it's a Netflix production, which is probably
That's probably why.
He does something very similar with a character in that, where the kid's a quick draw, you know, and like so proud of how fast he can draw, and he doesn't get to do it.
Right.
And it's a great scene. Honestly, I think that Godless is like Kasdan learning everything he did from Silverado, and then like, let me write the best Western show that I can.
I'll check that out.
Had you really not seen?
I haven't seen it.
Oh, dude, it's fucking great.
Cool. All right. I'll check that out.
Not to travel off topic too much, but no, dude, it's honestly, anybody who's listening to this, like Godless on Netflix, fantastic show.
Cool. All right.
Awesome.
It's like a limited series, so it's done.
It's one and done. It's like 7 episodes, tells the story, it's over.
Sweet.
But fantastic. But anyway, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so Emmett gets pretty roughed up in this.
And Mal saves him.
Yep.
And this is also another...
There's another plot link up here, too, where there was like a rifle that Ezra had, and then like the bandits took it.
Yeah, one of the men have it. It's a Henry rifle, I think.
Emmett got it at some point.
He saw it on the horse.
Yeah.
When they were in town, and they found out that the horse had been branded with McKendrick's brand, and it wasn't his
That's
horse.
how Emmett realized it was McKendrick's men that tried to kill him at the very beginning of the movie.
Right, and I think that's where he gets the rifle from there.
Because then Mal gets it back finally, because he's like an excellent shot with it.
Yeah. And it's also another trope that we see a lot in Westerns, especially the newer ones, when he has to nurse himself back to health. You see that almost. That's almost in every Eastwood Western.
Yeah.
It started with definitely with what was the first one? Help me out here.
Hang 'em high.
No. The first spaghetti Western. He was what the hell?
Fistful of Dollars.
Thank you, Fistful of Dollars, because he gets fucked up in that one. And it's always like he has to get beaten down, then he has to raise up, and he's getting even stronger.
Right.
So we get that trope here too with Emmett.
Yeah, so...
Meanwhile, though, back in Silverado,
There's a lot of meanwhiles.
Cobb has gone to Payton because he knows all this is about to pop off. And he kind of not so indirectly suggests that if he happens to get involved at all, something bad will happen to Stella.
Yeah.
And kind of uses that to lock him out of the conflict.
Right.
It's...
Because he knows
Dude's a right bastard.
he knows his personality,
Yeah.
so he knows he'll never like risk an innocent person like that.
Yeah.
And that's, like we'd already talked about, that there's not a romantic relationship, but there's such a good friendship with them that I almost would have... I buy it more.
Yeah.
That he's not going to let anything happen to his friend than if it were a love interest. You know, like it's played better. But
She eventually just confronts him about it.
yeah. There's a great scene of the two of them stocking in the back of stocking whiskey. Or they're like pouring whiskey bottles out of a keg of whiskey, and there's a great scene where it's like they're basically pouring rock gut whiskey, and I think they're watering it down too. Payton sees this bottle and he's like, "What's that?" And she's like, "That's the good stuff." And they look at each other and they're like, "To the good stuff," you know. And it's just a great little moment, character building moment between the two of them. And so you see them drinking the good stuff together, you know, which I think is another fun little drop. You know, that we see that scene, and now they're sitting around the table. Payton finds out essentially that
Isn't it Mal comes to get him, I think?
I don't remember if Mal came to get him.
Maybe it's just Stella asked him to go, I think.
I think so. Yeah.
They know that everybody's in trouble because I think they'd taken Jake at this point, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of ins and outs, and it's almost impossible to go through every little point.
They'd taken at one point they kidnapped Jake, and they also kidnapped Augie, the little.
I do know one thing. Mal has met with his sister at this point.
Oh,
and he's
yeah.
kind of tried to like dissuade her from hanging out with Slick.
Right.
But she like wants nothing to do with him at this point.
But Payton knows that all this shit's going down with his friends, and now he's stuck because he either has to make the decision to try to protect Stella or go to the aid of his friends. And I do love the scene. It's kind of cheesy, but I love it when Payton when he decides to do it. Because you see this really funny scene where Mal has both of his rifles. Yeah. He's like got bandoliers around him. And Emmett's like, "Do you want one of these guns, one of these pistols, or whatever?" And Mal's like, "No, these will do."
Yeah.
And it's like
I got what I need.
Full Rambo moment. But they basically do their let's ride into town.
Well, they go to raid McKendrick's ranch.
Right.
And
That's where you see
they
the big cattle herd.
Yeah, they rally up the cattle into a stampede to just tear through there.
But when they're riding, it's cheesy. But when Payton just rides up and joins them, and they just all share a look. It's a little cheesy, but I like it.
It's great. It's
you
the
know,
perfect amount of cheese.
I like it. But yeah, when they go to raid,
This is where the action really kicks up.
yeah, because so far there really hasn't been,
There's just been little
bits in here and there.
little hits here and
but
there.
not a ton of action. So McKendrick knows they're coming, essentially. So he's got dudes posted everywhere, like to keep an eye out or whatever. And so you just see the stampede of cattle come over the hill. That's another dude who gets to deliver a great line and does it very well. Stampede!
Yeah.
Yeah, so the cattle rip through everything. But meanwhile, they're riding with the cattle, essentially, and taking pot shots and like picking off his men. During the commotion, Mal is snuck up onto a roof. He's picking guys off left and right. It's a really well-crafted scene. I'm not entirely sure. I'd love to see how they managed to pull that off. Because with that, like, working with that many cattle, like, trying to get them to do that.
I have a note about this.
Oh,
Their livestock coordinator was Corky Randall, and he had a wrangling team, and they were responsible for more than 100 horses, 500 cattle, pigs, chickens, and other assorted animals, all brought in to make this sort of realistic atmosphere.
That's insane, man.
That is insane.
The fact that they were able to coordinate all of that into this giant action scene. There's it kind of plays out like any other shootout type thing.
Any Western you've seen this kind of shootout.
Yeah. One of my favorite scenes, though, from it is there's a dude who tries to get the jump on Mal, and he climbs up on the roof behind him, and he's trying to, like, sneak up.
Yeah.
Payton sees him, and he's trying to get Mal's attention, but everybody's like, there's so much gunfire, and finally Payton decides that the best way to do it is he shoots the building right next to Mal's head.
Yeah.
Mal swings around to shoot him, and Payton's like,
over
there! You know, and then Mal, of course, takes him out, but...
So in result of this, they rescue their nephew, but McKendrick escapes and races back to Silverado.
Of course.
The nephew thinks that Jake is dead because Jake tried to escape and said Jake fell off his horse. Well, Emmett knows Jake never falls off his horse. We've seen him do some trick riding already, like through the film, like hanging off the saddle and stuff like that. But then they do come across Jake in the barn, hiding out during the gunfight and everything.
Yep.
So,
And that sets up our final confrontation. Yep.
yeah.
Let's see who kills who.
the
Tyree Jake. Tyree is killed by Jake, and he has a cool scene where he's being stalked by those two men at the saloon.
Yeah.
And he backs out of it, and they're like on either side of him, and he draws both of his guns at the same time and shoots in different directions.
We've seen him do like lots of fun, swift, like gunslinging stuff already that he never gets to use. So you finally get a payoff with it.
Yeah.
Mal rescues his sister from Slick because he was in on things with Cobb and McKendrick.
Yep.
It's one of the weirdest kills, I think, because earlier in the film, Slick comes there to get Stella, I think, and Ray tries to help. And then she gets stabbed, and she's like kind of injured, but she's going to be okay.
She got shot, yeah.
Yeah, she got shot, yeah. But she's going to be fine. And then Mal gets this knife and kind of just stabs Slick once in the stomach, and then he just like folds and collapses. I mean, we think of D&D like when you roll up a character and you've got like one hit point out of the gate.
But I do like that scene because you see Slick earlier when he reaches for that knife in his boot. You know it's there. You remember it's there. And Kasdan writes it well enough that you know that you're expecting him to reach for that knife.
Yeah.
Because he's got this fun little two-shot Derringer that pops out of his coat all the time.
Yeah.
He gets those 2 shots done, so he knows that his gun's out. But like as a viewer, we're like, the knife, the knife. And you think he might stab him. But then it's the way they deliver, and Mal's like, "You looking for this?" And like stabs him. It's just a fun little payoff because you know we know it's there.
Right.
Emmett and McKendrick face off on horseback, and they kind of subvert like what this showdown would be if you just assume the typical Western plot. Because Emmett ends up dropping his gun,
Yeah.
puts him at a huge disadvantage, but he manages to kind of like guide his horse, and it kicks McKendrick in the head and just instantly kills him. It's one of the most brutal kills in the film, I think.
It's good.
Then we have the final showdown between Payton and Cobb.
Which
And this is they try to do the whole
that's your
like
typical high noon gun draw.
they've even got the tumbleweeds rolling through.
It's very classic, and Payton promptly takes care of Cobb. If I have one of my complaints is that scene. It's just a little too.
It doesn't have
It happens exactly how you think it's going to happen.
It's too on the nose for me.
and there's none of the, like the build up or the atmosphere.
Yeah, right. That's the only part that really falls flat for me.
I do like how it starts where Cobb's just like sitting on like the front porch of the sheriff station.
Yeah.
And then he's kind of just like, whoop, and stands up and walks out.
Yeah, we're going to do this.
But then once they square off, I don't know, there was something about it that just didn't like resonate right for me.
Yeah.
To me, it felt like, well, we haven't done a traditional shootout.
Yeah.
In a Western, and we need to stick one in, and this is... But, like, you never got anything with Payton to make you... To really build up, like, oh, Payton's a great gunfighter.
Yeah.
You don't really get a lot of that. Like, you see, him take some cool shots or whatever, but not like that. You would almost expect that more from Emmett. You know, because we see Emmett working on
We had that
his...
one scene where he shoots the guy off his horse with that crappy gun.
Yeah.
So we know he's capable.
But, yeah, it was a little off.
Yeah, it could have been a little bit more there at that point.
So they save the day. They've liberated Silverado. It kind of skips ahead a bit, and everyone's saying their goodbyes and going to part their separate ways again. Was it Emmett and Jake are going to head out to California?
Yep, they're going to California.
Going to find a place there.
Peyton stays. He's working at the saloon.
But he's also got another
He's
job.
the sheriff now.
Yeah.
There's a new sheriff in town.
And Mal and his sister reunite, and they're going to go back to the homestead and rebuild it and kind of actually achieve what their parents hoped it would be.
Right.
There is one line I forgot from earlier when they're around there, when the four heroes get together and they're kind of all around the campfire, and you learn that Mal is from Chicago. And there's Jake delivers this line. He's like, "Was it wonderful?"
Wow.
And Mal's like, "No,
It's awful.
it's awful." That scene always made me laugh.
Yeah.
Is it wonderful?
Such a good performance. Yeah, and that's pretty much the movie.
Yep.
There's that one line that Jake has when they're riding out. He turns back to everyone. And he says, "We'll be back." Like, is there going to be a sequel?
Maybe
Yeah, it
maybe
feels
they
like
were
a
setting
sequel
it
to
up.
Yeah, it really does.
And also they kind of resolved this little like love triangle thing with Hannah, which is awkward because
that's another complaint I had because
Yeah.
it's not there. The scenes were cut and it's just not
because
there.
it's earlier before the final fight. Emmett and Peyton kind of talk about it, and Peyton's like giving up on her, and he kind of like suggests Emmett to like, well, if
Yeah.
you like her, go for it.
And we never even got any scenes with them before, did we?
No,
There's like maybe one when they first like saved their
Yeah.
wagon train.
Yeah, that was a bit.
But then Emmett decides that he's going to go on and go to California, and she kind of mentions something about like she'll still be there waiting if he comes
Yeah.
back, and
Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
it doesn't matter. It really doesn't.
So Dustin, you've got some issues.
I do, but I want to talk about some other little bits. About the film.
Yeah, a little trivia here.
We should talk about Kevin Costner because he went on to star in a bunch of other westerns, like Wyatt Earp in '94, Open Range.
Also by Kasdan.
Yep, true. Open Range in 2003, and then of course in 1990 he did Dances with Wolves, which he won. That won a Best Picture Oscar.
You know something? I've never seen that movie.
It's excellent.
Oh, okay.
I watched it a long time ago as a kid. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be, and I'd like to watch it again now.
To me, it sounds like it rips off Avatar, so I don't know if I want to watch it.
Oh no. One person I thought was worth mentioning as far as like the production was Christy Zia. She had a staff of 4, and they handled all the costuming for the film. So in total, there was a cast of 54 like
Principles.
central principal characters and 500 extras, and they had to costume all of them for this film.
4 people, jeez.
And I had a note that they did extensive research and had a lot of conferences with Kasdan to like give each character like a distinctive silhouette, so that if you saw like each of the 4 leads like outlined, each one of them was different in some way, and it wasn't just like any one of them was equal to one of the others.
That's true.
So I thought that was a nice like little thing that they do have these 4 characters and they are each like distinct.
Absolutely.
Let's see what else was fun things. Cook Ranch was the site where they made like the Silverado set. It's 25 miles out of Santa Fe, New Mexico. That was also a huge, like, overwhelming task because they had to make like 40 buildings, I think they said in all, to lay out the town.
That was reused later on, right? Lots of other
Yes,
movies.
they were.
Yeah.
been easier if they just did cutouts of the town.
So that set was built for this
Blazing
movie. It was built for this movie, but since it's been used in Young Guns in '88, Wyatt Earp in '94, which is funny because that
Back to.
it's like, well, let's just use this again. Last Man Standing in '96, Lonesome Dove in '89, Pretty Horses in 2000, and Wild Wild West in '99,
Oh wow!
which also has
What a crappy movie.
Kevin Kline in it.
Yes.
It's like somebody saw Silverado and they were like, "Oh, Kevin Kline in a western. Let's put him in like on paper. Sure, that sounds good."
Which
Branagh.
just to throw it out there, also in the Wild Wild West, one of the buildings at that point, they have like a sign on it that says the Kasdan Iron Works, and they put that in the film in reference to
That's cool.
Kasdan.
Nice.
So I did come across a trivia that I don't remember from the film, but now if anybody watches this, like if you haven't watched it beforehand and you listen to us talk about it and you still want to watch it somehow, there is a scene.
What's wrong with you people?
There is a scene where Augie tries to jump onto Jake's horse.
Pays off.
And but he misses. but apparently the horse is wearing Jake's hat.
Yeah, he's leading him on, and the hat is on the horse.
And I don't remember that.
Really?
No, I somehow...
You don't remember the hat on the horse.
I think I just overlooked it. But apparently that's something Kevin Costner did.
Yeah.
Like, he thought that Jake would do something stupid like that.
He totally would do that.
And put it on there, so he just did it right before the camera started.
Yeah.
And Kasdan was like, what the fuck? Okay, that's hilarious. Yeah, leave it in.
It's great. He would totally do that.
I somehow don't
How
remember
did you miss
that.
the hat on the horse?
No,
Are you paying attention to these movies?
Listen, you didn't know the plot. You missed that.
You didn't fall asleep during it, though,
No,
right?
I didn't fall asleep. Most of the time I have to watch these movies, though, like with my kid in my lap.
Okay, one day that's not going to be an excuse anymore.
No.
So
Then
I
you
pray
guys
that
are
we
just,
make it to that day.
you all are just going to realize how ADHD I actually am. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm watching a movie currently. Whoops.
My last little set thing, the Midnight Star Saloon was purchased in 2001, and it got moved to Melody Ranch Studio in California, and it's set up there now as part of like a western town that you can like go and pay to see all the sets and stuff.
that's cool.
Because actually, it was the first time that Tiffany and I went on vacation out west. We went to a little place like that where they had like western sets that had been used in films.
It's pretty neat.
I would
It was
do that.
neat to just like, it was like a weird like faux constructed western town of just like, this is from this movie. Like they each had a plaque on them. It was really cool.
Did they have anything from Blazing Saddles?
It was nothing too big. It was like their biggest thing was like one of the lesser Clint Eastwood movies they had like a few buildings from. But it was fun.
Like, this is all we could afford.
It was a neat experience.
Yeah.
Remember the outhouse from Hang 'em High? It's right here.
So yeah, that's all my fun notes I have about the film.
Cool. Well, who wants to go first with final thoughts?
I'll start, get it out of the way. It's obviously my pick. I do think this is underseen. Even though it did well, I think that it gets lost because it's not the typical type of Western that people tend to love. It's not a Clint Eastwood Western, which is what everybody will always talk about. It doesn't have that same gritty atmosphere. It's not ultra violent. You know, it's more of an adventure film but a Western. Definitely. Like, I don't think you can misconstrue this. This is a Western. I think it's fun, and that's exactly why I like it. It's because to me, it's just a fun movie that's got a great cast. Some great lines in it too. You know, like a lot of memorable lines. Mal's, "Now I don't want to kill you, and you don't want to be dead."
Yeah. That is a
You
good
know,
one.
such fun lines throughout the film. Do I think it's perfect? No. Rewatching it, I think I'm gonna go with like 3.75 because I want to.
3.75.
I want to be
Can you
at
do
4.
that on Letterboxd, though?
You can't
I
do
don't
that.
think so.
Here's the thing: I really want to be at 4. I really do.
So you're 3.5.
But I think I have to be 3.5.
Okay.
But I don't think that means it's not good because I still have a ton of fun watching it.
Well, that's above average.
Yeah. I
well
mean,
above
it's
average.
way above Jason's average. I still have a ton of fun watching it. I think there's fantastic performances. It's so much fun. Will I sit and watch it as much as I do a la Josie Wales? No. But they're just different kind of movies. So, yeah, even though I brought it, I still say 3.5.
Okay. Well, not every pick has to be like, your favorite movie.
Yeah.
I think it...
But this, I mean, you're right. This is a great example of what a classic kind of Western is.
And if we're going to be talking about Westerns for a while, I thought it was a good one to start on.
Definitely.
Oh, that makes me feel better.
Because if you want to say, like, what's a Western, like, this film is definitely a Western.
Yeah.
No one could ever misconstrue that.
Well, do you want to give your thoughts? Because I have a feeling yours are more negative than mine will be.
Yeah, because I should preface, like, for me and my interest in Westerns as a genre, like, I love spaghetti Westerns. I love acid Westerns. Anything that's, like, gritty, that revisionist idea where they kind of have, like, the grittier look, the darker tone. That's, like, everything to me as far as what I enjoy.
Yeah.
And these classic Westerns, I know they're like well done, they're well executed, but I've never seen many that have ever appealed to me too much.
Okay.
And so this film, like, it definitely has its merits. There's a great cast. They all do amazing work in their roles. Every character is, like, well formed, well realized.
Sure.
All the stuff that I took notes on were things I thought were impressive about the film. The set design, the costuming, that they were able to actually manage all these animals. We didn't talk about it on air, but I told you, Jason, I just watched The Green Knight finally, and I was just like, the fucking fox, man, the CG fox. All it does is, like, walk and follow him, and they couldn't find one tame fox that they could shoot for that.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell?
Right.
But then you go to a film like Silverado and, like, hundreds of animals, and they've all got it orchestrated right for the shots.
80s, man. Fucking 80s.
It feels like to me like they go out of their way to hit every mainline Western trope along the way, and sometimes they don't always execute those well enough, and it's like they're just there to be there. Like what you were saying with the duel at the end.
Yeah.
They really could have like tuned that up more, and it would have hit harder for me. But it's like, what's just here? Because like, oh, we got to have the duel, and there's like this veneer of like, I hate to say hokiness because that feels like I'm insulting it, but like this family-friendly like veneer to it that's on there.
Is there something wrong with that?
It's just kind of unappealing to me.
Dustin's like, I fucking hate family-friendly shit.
Not always, but in the context of like a Western,
It's weird in Japanese.
it doesn't appeal to me as much.
There's no tentacles coming out of that.
So a lot of it to me, like it felt like this was people in the 80s nostalgic for that golden age of the 30s to the 50s Westerns, and they were just trying to like do that on a big level with the budget to do something impressive and like pay homage and love back to that.
Sure. Just like Raiders did with the old serials and stuff.
But for me, that's all stuff that I don't love. So to me, it's like one of those, it's like how I'm critical of Stranger Things where, yes, it's nostalgic to all the things I love, but it's in a way that's like unappealing to me.
Yeah. Very synthetic and forced. Yeah.
And then I thought too, the length, like it's about 2 hours, I
It's a
believe.
bit long.
It's like 210.
I'll say that. It's a bit long.
And like the first half is all the setup and them meeting, and then they get to Silverado, and then immediately they split them up to then do like a subplot for each person. And I mean, you'll probably notice listening to this episode going through, there's so much to the plot and so many things happen. And it's really, even for 2 hours, so much is crammed in, but it's like, it never flowed in a way to me that it felt like I was easily pulled through everything. It was just like, I kept looking at the time and I was like, wow, we're doing this now. And even at the halfway point, I was like, dude, we're not at Silverado yet. This is
When are we going to get to the fireworks factory?
Yeah. So yeah, it has its merits. It has its good points. It didn't appeal to me a ton. I wasn't super happy with it, but is what it is. I would give it like a 2-star.
Okay.
I do think it's worth seeing. I do think it has a lot of merits to it.
You are a harsh son of a bitch. You know that?
But if I'm honest, I would never watch it again.
Okay.
I love it.
Here's my take.
You hate long films.
I don't like bad long films.
I also love how much Jason will argue with you.
Yeah.
It's so much fun.
It's my favorite part.
Because I don't argue with anybody about anything.
What's the point if you're not arguing? All in good fun. Good fun
yeah.
arguing. Not like, you're stupid.
That's why I don't argue. 'cause
Jason,
I'm
I think
afraid
that
I'm
anyone
gonna
that would
say-
like this movie is just stupid and dumb, and they're just a waste of life, so...
I don't argue because I'm afraid it's going to end up with me being like, yeah, well, fuck you and fuck your mom.
Jason, what did you think of the film?
I love it. I think it's a great movie. It is a perfect Sunday afternoon movie. It's a perfect dad movie. You know, this is the sort of thing I watched with my dad back in the day.
Yeah.
This was a VHS rental for us a few times. It's not perfect. No. It is overlong. I think they probably could have just cut out the whole Rosanna Arquette stuff.
All the rancher stuff.
Well, they
really.
tried.
It doesn't really affect the plot.
No.
She doesn't wind up with anyone. We don't really find out anything more about the characters with her scenes in it.
And you don't even really need them for the McKendrick plot, because that's already going with, like, Mal's family.
Yeah. It was enough for me to see them get the treasure chest for them. You know, cool. You know, they're good people. They can handle themselves. They're working together as a group. Awesome. We didn't need the rest of it with the settlers. And the final shootout, that could have been a little bit better, you know. But, I mean, those complaints aside, I don't really have any others. And this movie also somehow led to one of my favorite comedies of all time, because John Cleese was really impressed with Kevin Kline and thought about him when he was writing
Fish Called Wanda. God, it's so fucking good.
Which Kline would get his freaking Oscar for.
I've never actually seen that.
You have not seen A Fish Called Wanda?
It's great.
Okay, we're going to do British comedies as a block, and I'll do Fish Called Wanda and make him watch it.
I love that movie so much.
So, I think, I would give it 4 stars. I think it's a fun movie. It's an old-fashioned kind of movie. It's that perfect 80s film where it's fun, but still well-made and smart.
Yeah.
You know? And you just don't really see that much anymore with mainstream films, in my opinion.
I agree. There's not as...
Okay.
There is few and... Well, smart movies are starting to be fewer and far between.
Okay, so that's the first one. Jason, what's next in order?
Okay. Well, I'm going to roll the dice and submit something I haven't watched yet,
Uh-oh.
but has been on my radar, and I think this would be something interesting for us to all watch together. I don't know if you all have watched it or not. From 2016, called Brimstone.
Never heard of it.
I don't think I've watched it.
It has Guy Pearce in it, has Dakota Fanning in it, has Kit Harington and Cary Van Houten in it.
Interesting.
Who are both in Game of Thrones. I will give you the synopsis here. In the menacing inferno of the old North American West, Liz is a genuine survivor who is hunted by a vengeful preacher for a crime she didn't commit. Mm-hmm. I don't know very much about this. It's been on several lists of like underseen movies and westerns in particular.
And if we want to check this out, where would we watch it?
It's on Fubo.
The fuck is Fubo?
I don't know.
Just say, what the fuck is Fubo?
I don't know.
I've seen this cover before.
Yes. Yeah.
The cover does
it's
not.
It's a cool poster though. If it's the same one we're looking at, it's like a cross. And
No, I'm looking at the one with Kit Harington. It's like a
generic face.
It's a generic floating heads. Yeah.
Yeah. No, this one's much better.
That's probably the red box poster.
Here's a poster. Look at that one.
Oh no, that one's cooler. Yeah.
It's all right.
It's on Showtime. If you have that, you can rent it on Apple TV. Amazon, you can rent it for $4. Oh, it's on Tubi. Here you go. It's on Tubi.
Oh, okay.
Tubi, the great savior.
Saved by Tubi.
Now, it's a long movie, so if you watch it on Tubi, it's going to be even longer because of the ads. And it might break up the momentum.
How long is it?
It's 2.5 hours.
Jesus, Jason.
I am challenging myself with a long movie and one I haven't seen.
Interesting. This should be a curious continuation of our thing.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, next time, Brimstone.
Okay. As always, thank you guys so much for everything that you do. Thank you for commenting. Thank you for sharing. Please continue to send us recommendations. We're compiling a list. We will get to them as we can, I promise.
We'll filter them in between every block of theme.
If you're worried that we won't get to your movie before one of us dies, don't worry. We're all in pretty good health. So we'll probably make it. Yeah, continue to send us comments, email, all that shit, whatever you want to do.
We love it.
Yep, we love it. It makes our day. We send little text messages back and forth like, hey, did you see somebody commented? And we're like, oh, yeah, that makes me happy. Okay, but until next time, you've been listening to Genre Exposure.
Bye, everyone.
Take care.
You're listening to the Prescribed Films Podcast Network, home to hundreds of hours of free podcast entertainment. The shows on this network all have a common goal, providing you with the best discussions about movies and other forms of entertainment media. The PFPN hopes to fill your earholes with audio joy. Visit our website with links to all the other amazing shows at www.thepfpn.com. Thanks for listening.